Welcome to the Northern Utah NTMA Machinist Apprenticeship Training webinar. Thank you for participating in the apprenticeship program. In this webinar, titled Northern Utah Apprenticeship Program Educational Partner Overview, Paula Harbath will describe how to meet the classroom requirements of the Department of Labor approved Machinist Apprenticeship Program. He will introduce you to your partners and explain how to contact them. Stay tuned for our next webinar, Creating the Final Submission Package to the Department of Labor. If you have any questions about the Northern Utah NTMA Apprenticeship Program, please contact any of these people. Now, let's join Paul as he presents Northern Utah NTMA Machinist Apprenticeship Program Educational Partner Overview. My name is Paul Harbath. I am the chair for this committee for the partner connection, connecting with your partners to help you with your apprenticeship program. Travis Minion is also available for us today if we have any questions. Travis is the one that did the webinar last time and helped with the on-the-job requirements. We're going to review the timeline for the apprenticeship program. We're going to talk about the classroom requirements. We're going to talk about who potentially your partners are, how to maintain your records, and how you can handle the costs. And at that point, any questions that anybody has. So before we get going, let's talk about the next webinar that's coming up, and that's the one where we're going to actually finalize your submission to the Department of Labor. That'll be hosted by Travis and myself. We've set it tentatively for the 3rd of February. In the follow-up email for this webinar, you will see a link at the bottom. If you click on that link or copy the link and paste it in your browser, it will let you sign up for the webinar right now. That way you don't have to worry about it. And you'll get signed up and you'll be all ready. What we're going to be doing then is we're going to actually be putting everything together to send the submission to the Department of Labor. Let's talk about the timeline on how this is all happening here. The green across the top of the timeline are the deadlines that we all have to get things done. So you can see we had an original kickoff meeting. We had a draft of the on-the-job requirements, which was due at the end of last year. The blue down on the bottom are learning webinars. Those are the webinars that we can put together for you to make sure that if you have any questions or anything you need to know gets covered. Of course, the first one was the last one that Travis did back on the 2nd of December, and the one circled in the red is the one we're doing right now. So you can kind of see what the rest of the deadlines are. You can see on 2/15, we're expecting to actually do the submission to the Department of Labor. So we will be sending your packets to the Department of Labor for their approval. We're expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 months for them to get the approval done. So we're expecting somewhere around April 1st that the approval would be back. At that point, somewhere around the 1st of June, possibly earlier if the DOL gets back to us sooner, we will be ready, or I should say you will be ready to begin to hire apprentices. So we have one other webinar scheduled out there in May, and that's talking kind of more of an overview about how everything is going to work in terms of hiring, how to use the system that Helen is putting together that attracts people and things like that. The basic classroom requirements for the Department of Labor is 576 hours of classroom training over a minimum of 4 years. Realize this is a minimum. Actually, I should say that's a maximum of 4 years. This is a minimum requirement. So if you have any more, you're fine. There really isn't any specific guidelines from the Department of Labor on what content is in the 576 hours. It's going to really be up to you. Possible methods to complete that classroom requirement would be you could go to your local applied technology college. You also could use online programs if you choose to do that. The key is you must be able to show evidence of each of your apprentice people going through the program. That includes even if you're grandfathering someone that has been working for you for some time. You will still have to show that they have been through the classroom training as evidenced by a certificate or something like that. So that will be a requirement that you'll have to show. Who are your partners? In the last email that I sent to you just here recently, I've created a reference sheet. Now, I realized that a couple are missing. Didn't even think about it. I was just talking to Travis. Didn't even think about the fact that many of the ATCs are gone over most of the month of December. So I couldn't get a hold of a couple of people. I'm thinking that by the time I send this out to you again, which will be the next day or so, I'll probably have that information filled in. But what this does is this gives you the contact information, both for the local ATC, that would be the person that would help you with the classroom requirements, and the NTMAU if you so choose to use that. Whatever you choose to do, it's your responsibility to make the contact, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. So again, I will be sending that sheet out updated in the next few days. But that's the sheet you use that tells you who to talk to. The typical example of what this might look like, I just used the Ogden-Weber ATC just because they're close here. They have a program called Machinist Level 1. You see up just under their logo on the right, it says Machinist Level 1. Machinist Level 1 is a total of 900 hours, so it's actually more than you really need, but it meets the requirements of the 576 hours over a period of 4 years. So if you have an apprentice complete that program in this case, at the Ogden-Weber ATC, they will meet the DOL requirements of an apprentice. So if you decide to use Ogden-Weber ATC, let's go here to the next slide. Your initial submission to the Department of Labor would be to send that previous slide outline along with your submission, send that to them, and then for each apprentice, after they're completed, when you're ready to submit for their particular apprentice approval, you will send the completed certificate from wherever that is. So 2 things you have to do. One, you have to submit it initially and say, here's what we're going to do to meet the classroom requirements. And then second, when they're done, then you send the one that shows the evidence that they actually did that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the costs and how the costs might work here. You have 2 choices with the costs for each of your individual apprentices. You can choose to cover the cost for them, or you can choose for them to pay it out of their own pocket. If you choose to reimburse them for their education, then we've got some more to talk about. If you choose not to do that, you have no costs, and then there's really nothing else to talk about. You just say that. It is normal to have an employee. What we're going to talk about now is, let's say that you do choose to reimburse your employee for their costs. And when you contact the ATC, you can get the specifics of how much it costs. You can get all those numbers. If you choose to do that, it is really normal in industry to have the employee sign an agreement that says, if I pay back your tuition costs, you agree to work for me for the next X period of time, something like that. If you leave for a reason on your own, say you decide you found another job, then you are agreeing to repay that tuition that I paid for you. You're agreeing to repay it back to me. It's very normal to have those agreements, and I will send one out with the next email that I send. I will send you a sample agreement, one that explains that. Also, if you are an NTMA member, they will help you with any legal advice, anything like that. So again, this only applies if you are choosing to reimburse the employee for their tuition costs. If you're not, then you don't need to worry about that at all. The reimbursement costs that if you choose to reimburse your employee for the costs, you are now paying the tuition costs. Because of that, the local custom fit in your area will potentially reimburse you for a portion of that training cost. So as you go out to the ATC or NTMAU, whatever you're going to use, as you go out to them and you understand costs, if you're going to pay the tuition, you can go to the custom fit in your area, and normally I believe it's somewhere in the 30 to 40% of that cost they will cover. They will pay back to you. What I'm going to do is I will make a list of all the custom fits in the area and get that to everyone, and then you can contact them directly. The thing to understand here is it really has nothing to do with the Department of Labor submission. It's strictly a way that you potentially can get your tuition reimbursement costs back to you and get some of that cost offset. So if you're interested in that, after you've contacted the OWATC and determined what you're going to do, then you can contact the custom fit, and I will send out a list of those people, the custom fits, if you're not familiar with them already. For those of you in Salt Lake, I'm still working directly with them to understand about custom fit. Since Salt Lake is a college, custom fit deals with them a little bit differently. So I'm still working through the details of how that tuition reimbursement might work. And I'll get that updated information to you. Okay, so really, that's really it. Now, as we go through this, if you have any questions, submit them in the question box, and then I'll reiterate the question, and then we'll answer any questions that you have. Because that's really it. I mean, all we really have is we have a timeline that we're going through. We have finalizing the on-the-job requirements and this classroom stuff, which is expected at the end of this month. Then the final submission, where the webinar on the 3rd, is where we will actually show you how to put the whole package together, and then we will actually do the submission. And so all you need to do is contact the ATC you want to work with, figure out what their standard program is, get a copy of that program, and you can also at that point begin to estimate costs. It's really pretty straightforward. So the next step, your responsibility to contact either the ATC in your area or the NTMAU directly with any questions you have. And then what you're looking for there is you're looking to get the program that will meet the requirements. If you choose to add additional things or do anything with the ATC, that's entirely up to you. And you can go on. You can do whatever you would like to do. That's really your choice, as long as you meet the minimum requirements. And I think all of the OWATC, or all of the ATCs, I should say, are going to have that. In fact, just a second here. Bri actually asked me just now if the Davis ATC has a program, and the answer is yes, they do. It's very similar to the one in the OWATC. The only reason I didn't include it is I couldn't actually get in contact with them, and I wanted them to write down the specifics. So all of them that you see on that list, I've contacted directly. I couldn't get the ATC because of the vacation. I will in the next day or so, but I know that they do have a program very similar to the OWATC. So I will send this follow-up email that will include the contact list, that example employee agreement that I talked about, and then later at some point I will send a list of the custom fits in the area. So the next important dates: finalize your on-the-job training model, the one that Travis went over. Determine your classroom method. So which ATC are you going to use and what's it called? If you're in the Ogden area, all you have to do is make a copy of the Machinist 1 and you're done. That's all you have to do. The next thing would be prepare for any final questions you have prior to the submission, because we will have another webinar about that submission. The deadline for that is the 31st, so it's going to be a week before our next webinar. And then in the next webinar, we're actually going to create the package, and we'll be, by the time that webinar is over, within the next few days, we will actually be submitting the package to the Department of Labor for approval. Okay, so if you have any questions about any of that. And then, of course, the other thing is, if you do decide to reimburse your employee for tuition costs, you can also research how the custom fit how that works, because it does depend on available funds and things like that, but you can work through that. So that's really all we have today. If you have any questions after the webinar, here's all the contact information. Any questions at all? If you have any questions today, again, about any of this, go ahead and type your question in. If there's any other things you have. Travis, why don't you come on and say a couple of words about what you've been doing with the people that have been working through their on-the-job training requirements.
Okay, thanks, Paul. We do have several template drafts that have been submitted, and we're looking over right now. I will be calling everybody, all the participating companies. I'm going to try and get through everybody by the end of the week. If I don't get to everyone, I will be calling early next week just to kind of have a phone conversation, make sure we're all on the same page with what you're hoping to get out of this, and that the templates are going to do what you want, will meet your goals. And then as we get closer to doing our final submissions, I for sure, and possibly Helen, will be trying to set up some face-to-face appointments where we can come out to your facilities, we'll sit down and go over all the paperwork, make sure the entire package is complete, so that when we get ready to submit those to the DOL, there's not going to be a bunch of back and forth. We can just have a complete package ready to go, and that'll help expedite the registrations with the Department of Labor as well. So anyway, we're just excited to keep moving forward on this. Everything's going really good so far, so we appreciate everybody's participation and willingness to put in the time. We know there is some time involved in this, and it's good for everybody to do. The long-term benefits are going to be fantastic, I think. So thank you all for your efforts.
And then there has been really good participation, and should turn out being a great thing for all of us. So at this point, does anybody have any other questions about this part, or any questions for Travis for that matter, or for that matter, any questions for Helen? I'm sure we could get an answer. If you don't have any questions, if you do, type them in the question box and we'll get to them. If you don't have any questions, remember that this will be recorded and will be available. If for some reason you need to look at it, if you forgot the contact information or anything, you can always go out to that webinar and the recorded webinar on YouTube and scroll to the end, and you can see all of the contact information. Other than that, the OWATC, I keep saying that, the ATCs are familiar with what we're doing here. So when you go to them and say, I'm part of the NTMAU or the Utah NTMA apprenticeship program, they're going to know what you're talking about, and then you can just ask them for, this program, and they can give you the outline. So I don't see any other questions. So I think at this point, then, we're going to go ahead and drop off. I appreciate everybody taking the time to come and listen to this last little bit, and we will plan on seeing you, talking with you again on the 3rd, and like Travis said, probably some one-on-ones prior to that. to finish the final submissions. So again, appreciate everybody logging on today for a few minutes, and we'll see all of you soon. Thank you very much.